My wife's betrayal, I need space, flew to Europe for a month, left me with our 1-year-old daughter. When she returned, a stranger, talk. She froze hard. The moment my wife walked out that door, suitcases in hand, to find herself for a month in Europe, leaving me alone with our 1-year-old daughter, I knew our lives would never be the same. But I had no idea just how utterly broken they were about to become. I'm Michael, 32, an IT consultant, and I genuinely believed we had a normal, loving marriage. Chloe and I had built a life together over 6 years, married for 3. Our little Hannah had just celebrated her first birthday when Chloe dropped the bombshell. She called it her self-care trip, planned over 2 months with her college friends, the kind of friends who still lived like perpetual 23-year-olds, unburdened by kids or mortgages. The itinerary was a whirlwind: Paris, Rome, Barcelona, Amsterdam. A whole month of bouncing around Europe, like some extended gap year she'd never had. When she first told me, I actually laughed. I thought she had to be joking. Who, in their right mind, leaves their 1-year-old baby for a month-long party spree across an entire continent? But Chloe wasn't laughing. Her face was this strange blend of defiance and sheer exhaustion. She looked me dead in the eye and said, "Michael, I've lost myself. I'm not just a mom. I'm a person, and I need to remember who that person is." I tried, I really did, to be understanding. I suggested, softly, that maybe we could plan a long weekend instead, just for her. But she cut me off. "That won't be enough," she insisted. "I need real distance, real time. And you're my husband. You should be able to handle this." She'd been devouring articles about maternal burnout, quoting therapists, even mentioning Oprah a couple of times. All I could think was, this isn't about burnout. This is about wanting to pretend you don't have a child. I asked her, how could she leave Hannah for so long? And just like that, she flipped. Defensive. "Hannah will be fine," she'd snap. "Babies are resilient. You're being dramatic." Every single time I tried to voice my concern, she twisted it into me not supporting her mental health. The weeks leading up to her departure were a living nightmare. She was glued to her phone, constantly texting friends about fancy hotels and restaurants. I started noticing small, subtle changes in how she treated Hannah. She'd let her cry longer, or hand her off to me the second our daughter got fussy. Anytime Hannah needed anything, Chloe would let out this exaggerated sigh, as if our child was the biggest inconvenience in her meticulously planned rediscovery tour. Everything revolved around the trip, around her, around this new, unburdened version of herself she was supposedly finding. She'd stay up late, lost in travel blogs, while I handled every single bedtime routine alone. I'd walk out to the living room, utterly drained, and she'd barely even glance up from her screen. I tried to talk logistics, practical things. What if Hannah gets sick? What if I have a work crisis? She'd just wave me off, brushing it away with a dismissive "you're worrying too much." The night before she left, I made one last-ditch effort. "Are you absolutely sure about this, Chloe?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She shot me this frustrated, almost angry look. "Michael, I need this, or I'm going to lose my mind." Lying awake in bed later, listening to her pack her suitcases, a chilling thought settled in my gut: this doesn't feel like a vacation. This feels like an escape. The morning itself was a blur. I took the day off to drive her to the airport. Hannah was in her car seat in the back, already fussy, fighting a cold that had plagued her all week. Chloe just stared out the window, headphones on, as if we weren't even there. I tried small talk, asked if she had her passport, but she'd just nod, or give a clipped, one-word answer. The tension in that car was suffocating. Every time Hannah whimpered, I'd glance at Chloe, begging for any reaction. But there was nothing. Just that cold, blank stare. When we finally pulled up to departures, I helped her unload her bags. That's when Hannah really started crying. Not just a fuss, that heart-wrenching, panic-stricken wail babies make when they instinctively know something is terribly wrong. I looked at Chloe, my voice strained. Are you absolutely certain? I pleaded. Maybe cut it to 2 or 3 weeks? She snapped. Her words cut through the air like glass. Michael, I need this or I'm going to lose my mind. The finality in her voice hit me like a physical blow. The conversation was over. I couldn't say another word. I just stood there, holding our screaming Hannah. Chloe leaned in, gave Hannah a quick kiss on her forehead, and mumbled, "Mommy will be back soon, sweetie." But when Hannah's tiny arms reached out for her, Chloe just pulled away. She told me she'd text when she landed, grabbed her suitcase, and walked into the terminal. She never once looked back. I just stood there, helpless, watching her disappear through the automatic doors, Hannah's sobs echoing in my ears, her little face buried in my shoulder. I got back in the car, sat in the driver's seat for what felt like an eternity, 5 long minutes, just listening to my daughter scream, trying desperately to process what had just happened. When does needing space turn into needing to be on another continent, away from your own child? When I finally pulled into our apartment complex, a terrifying realization washed over me. I had no idea what I was doing. I'd never been alone with Hannah for more than a few hours, and now I was facing 30 days. The first days were absolutely brutal. Hannah would cry every single night, sharp at 7 p.m., the exact time Chloe used to put her to bed. I was trying to work from home, trying to keep my job, all while caring for a baby who just wanted her mom and couldn't understand why she wasn't there. I was getting maybe 3 hours of broken sleep. Then, 6 a.m., diapers, breakfast, emails, while Hannah pulled on my leg or joyfully threw food across the floor. And meanwhile, Chloe? She was busy posting photos of quaint cafes in Paris, glamorous cocktails in Rome. She'd text every few days, "Hope you guys are doing okay," followed by a heart emoji. So casual. Like checking on a houseplant. When I tried to update her, tell her Hannah had been up all night with a fever, or I'd had to duck out of a work meeting for a full-on diaper blowout, her response would come 6 or 7 hours later, "Poor baby, glad you're handling it." Glad I'm handling it? It was like I'd just reported a minor inconvenience. I wasn't asking her to come home, or even to feel guilty. I was just updating her about her daughter. And her responses, they felt like they were meant for someone else's kid. By the second week, I stopped expecting her to ask how we were doing. Because she just didn't. I'd look down at my daughter, this tiny, innocent person who didn't understand why her mom wasn't there, and my mind would drift to Chloe in some chic Barcelona Airbnb, clinking wine glasses with her college friends. And something inside me, something fundamental, just shifted. It wasn't anger yet. It was something colder. Clearer. A dawning, horrifying realization: Chloe wasn't on a trip. She was living like she didn't have a child. Like Hannah didn't exist. Someone had to live like Hannah did exist. Someone had to be the parent who stayed. That someone was me. My neighbor, Mrs. Delaney, was the first one to truly notice something was wrong. She'd been hearing Hannah cry through the walls at all hours. One morning, as I was dragging the trash out at 6 a.m., looking like a zombie who hadn't slept in a week, she stopped me in the hallway. "Everything all right, Michael?" she asked gently. I mumbled something about Chloe traveling for work. It was just easier than explaining the soul-crushing truth. She gave me that look. You know the one. The look older women give when they know you're drowning, but they're too polite to call you out on it. Then she said, "I could watch Hannah for a few hours, dear, if you need to catch up on some sleep." I almost broke down right there. I hadn't realized how desperately I needed help until someone actually offered it. That very same week, Hannah developed an ear infection. She kept tugging at her left ear, crying more than usual. When her temperature spiked to 102, I knew. Urgent care, immediately. I spent 4 agonizing hours in that waiting room, a screaming baby in my arms, trying to keep her calm while simultaneously answering urgent work emails. I had a client presentation the next day. The doctor finally saw us around 8 p.m., prescribed antibiotics, and told me to keep a close eye on her temperature. I texted Chloe, trying to keep it factual, just the bare necessities. Her response came the next morning, a sad face emoji, poor baby. Glad you got her to a doctor. Like I'd taken Hannah for a routine checkup, not dealt with a full-blown medical emergency completely alone. That same day, Chloe posted a photo, Barcelona, rooftop bar, a brightly colored cocktail, with the caption, "Living my best life sparkles airplane." I stared at my phone, a wave of nausea washing over me. How is this the same person who used to cry watching videos of Hannah learning to clap? The contrast, it was sickening. My daughter was sick, miserable, clinging to me, and I was running on fumes, while Chloe was out there, acting 23 again, zero responsibilities, living her best life. Around week 3, the financial aspect started to really get to me. I logged into our joint checking account. What I saw made my blood run cold. Charges from Europe, restaurants racking up $200 bills, hotels costing $300 for $100 a night, ATM withdrawals for hundreds of euros. In 3 weeks, she'd blown through nearly $7,000. Meanwhile, I was buying mountains of diapers, groceries, Hannah's prescription meds, paying rent, utilities, the entire household budget was falling on me. I started taking screenshots of every single transaction. A primal instinct, a knot in my gut, told me I needed documentation. I saved them all in a folder simply labeled Expenses 2024. My life was running on pure autopilot. Wake at 6 a.m. when Hannah cried. Change diaper, make breakfast, try to squeeze in work while she played with blocks or watched Bluey. Put her down for a nap, then work frantically during that precious, tiny window. Lunch. More work. Dinner. Bath time. The hour-long bedtime routine. And then, maybe an hour to myself before collapsing from sheer exhaustion. My boss had been understanding the first week, but by week 3, his emails were getting pointed, need to discuss your availability. One afternoon, mid-client video call, Hannah erupted in screams in the background. I had to hit mute, frantically rock her, all while pretending to pay rapt attention to the screen. The second the call ended, a message popped up from my boss, "We need to talk." My stomach dropped through the floor. That's when Ron saved me. He was a senior consultant, an older guy in his mid-50s, who'd apparently overheard me scheduling Hannah's follow-up pediatrician appointment. After a meeting, he pulled me aside. "You look like absolute hell, man." "What's going on?" he asked, his voice kind but direct. Something about that blunt honesty, that genuine concern, just broke through my wall. I gave him the severely abbreviated version: wife in Europe for a month, baby at home with an ear infection, me trying to keep my job and my sanity. Ron nodded slowly, knowingly, like he'd heard this story 1,000 times before. Then he told me. 20 years ago, his ex-wife had left him with their 6-year-old son for 6 months to find herself in California. By the time she came back, he'd already filed for separation and primary custody. He looked me dead in the eye. "The court doesn't care about feelings, Michael," he said, his voice firm. "It cares about facts. Who's feeding the kid? Who's taking her to the doctor? Who's actually showing up day after day?" Then, he pulled out a business card. A family lawyer named Patty. I took the card, thanked him profusely, but insisted, "I don't think it'll come to that, Ron." He just shrugged. "Maybe not. But keep it. Just in case." I didn't call that lawyer right away. A stubborn, hopeful part of me still believed this was temporary. That Chloe would come home, see the mess she'd made, and feel truly terrible. But that belief was getting harder and harder to cling to, especially when her Instagram stories started popping up from Amsterdam, Chloe, at clubs, 2 a.m., dancing and laughing, completely carefree. Around day 20, I started keeping a log. Nothing fancy, just a spiral notebook. But in it, I meticulously recorded everything. What time Hannah woke up, what she ate, every doctor visit, exactly how much money Chloe was spending, what time she texted, and her exact words. I felt utterly insane, documenting my entire life as evidence for a trial that hadn't even been scheduled yet. But Ron's words echoed in my head, a constant, chilling refrain: facts, not feelings. Chloe called me exactly twice the entire month. Twice. Once from Paris, during the first week, a clearly token effort. And once from Amsterdam, near the very end, just to give me her flight details. Both conversations were excruciatingly awkward. She'd ask, "How's Hannah doing?" I'd give a clipped, one-sentence answer. Then she'd fill the silence talking about museums and restaurants and how good it felt to be free for a while. That word, free, it lodged in my brain like a poisonous splinter. That's how she saw her life with us. As something she needed to be free from. A prison she'd temporarily escaped. During that second, brief call, I finally asked, "Have you thought about what happens when you get back?" She just laughed, an uncomfortable, hollow sound. "Let's just take it one day at a time, Michael," she chirped. That was it. 3 days before Chloe was scheduled to fly home, I finally called Patty. I was up at 2 a.m. with Hannah, who couldn't sleep, rocking her gently in the dark, silent living room. And that's when it hit me, with bone-rattling clarity, I couldn't let this happen again. I couldn't let Chloe waltz back in, pretend nothing had changed, and then maybe do this exact same thing 6 months down the line. I called Patty the next morning, left a rambling, desperate message. She called back within the hour. I told her everything: the month-long trip, the astronomical spending, the shocking lack of contact with Hannah, me being the sole caregiver for 30 excruciating days. Patty listened, silent, completely absorbed. When I finished, she paused, then spoke, her voice calm but firm. "Michael, what you're describing is called parental abandonment. And in custody cases, it matters. I need to ask you directly, do you want full custody of your daughter?" I didn't hesitate. Not for a second. I just said, yes. Patty laid out the plan. We'd file for temporary custody, get an emergency court order before Chloe even landed. We needed to move fast, maybe 48 hours to get everything filed and approved. I signed the paperwork that afternoon, my hands shaking so hard I could barely hold the pen. She assured me everything would be submitted by end of business. Then she said something that made me freeze: "You should change the locks. The custody order will legally allow it." I thought, this is insane. Locking my wife out of her own home. But then, the memory flashed back: Hannah, screaming at the airport, Chloe literally prying our daughter's tiny hands off her jacket. And in that moment, I realized, changing those locks, that was the sanest thing I'd done in a month. Chloe landed at 9 p.m. on Sunday. I knew. She posted a photo from the airport, home sweet home, earlier that day. A locksmith had come that morning. The custody order was active, enforceable. Hannah was sound asleep in her crib, utterly oblivious. I sat on the couch, the court documents heavy in a manila folder on my lap, and I waited. Around 10:30, I heard it. Footsteps in the hallway. They stopped at our door. Then, the telltale confused rattle of a key turning uselessly in a lock. A beat of silence. Then, a knock. I opened the door. There she stood, suitcase and carry-on at her feet. A huge, beaming smile on her face, like she'd just returned from a relaxing spa weekend. I watched, clinically, as that smile withered and died when her eyes met mine. Confusion clouded her face. "Why doesn't my key work?" she asked, her voice light. I didn't say a word. I just handed her the manila folder. "Read what's inside," I told her, my voice flat. She opened the folder right there in the hallway. I watched her face, a canvas of shifting emotions, confusion, then shock, then pure panic. Her wide eyes shot up to mine. "What is this?" she shrieked. "What the hell is this, Michael?" I remained calm. Measured. "It's a temporary custody order," I explained. I filed for sole custody while you were gone. I've been the only parent for 30 days. And I'm not going to let that become permanent." She started shaking her head violently, utterly disbelieving. "You can't do this," she cried. "I was only gone 1 month. That doesn't make me a bad mother." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I just laid out the facts, cold and hard. "You left our 1-year-old for 30 days to party across Europe. You spent $7,000 on yourself while I paid for every diaper, every medicine, every single bill. You barely checked in." She tried to push past me, but I stepped firmly in front of her. "The court order states you cannot enter this residence," I told her. "You need to contact your own lawyer." That's when the angry tears started. Her face flushed crimson. "You can't keep me from my daughter," she screamed. Very quietly, I responded, "I'm not keeping you from Hannah, Chloe. The court is. Because the court cares about who actually showed up when it mattered." She pulled out her phone. "I'm calling the police," she declared, her voice trembling with rage. "Go ahead," I said. And she did. She actually dialed 911 right there in the hallway. I walked back inside and closed the door, listening to her frantically explain to the dispatcher. I went to Hannah's room. She was still sound asleep, completely unaware. 20 minutes later, the police officer arrived. I heard Chloe outside, talking to him desperately. When he knocked, I opened the door, showed him the custody order. He read through it carefully, asked a few questions, then went back outside to speak with Chloe. I could only hear fragments: "Civil matter, order is legal and enforceable, need to get your own attorney." After about 15 agonizing minutes, I heard footsteps retreating down the stairs. Then, silence. The weeks that followed were a complete blur of lawyers and court dates. Chloe hired her own attorney within 2 days, immediately filing an emergency motion to dismiss my custody order, claiming I'd acted in bad faith. But Patty destroyed that argument. She brought printed copies of Chloe's Instagram posts, showcasing her partying in 4 different countries. Bank statements detailing that $7,000 in lavish spending. Text logs, clearly showing Chloe taking hours to respond about Hannah being seriously sick. The judge looked at Chloe directly. "Why?" he asked, his voice sharp. "Do you feel it was appropriate to leave a 1-year-old for an entire month?" Chloe launched into a long, rehearsed speech about maternal mental health, burnout, and needing space to heal. The judge just stared at her, an expression of utter disbelief on his face. Then he cut her off. "Space, Mrs. Thompson," he stated, his voice ringing with authority, "is a weekend away. Maybe even a week. It is not a month-long vacation in Europe while your husband shoulders every single responsibility." The temporary custody order was extended for another 60 days. Chloe was granted supervised visitation, 2 hours, twice a week, at a family center, under the watchful eye of a social worker. I brought Hannah to that first supervised visit. I wasn't prepared for how incredibly difficult it would be. And not because I felt any pity for Chloe. It was because Hannah didn't reach for her. At all. She stayed in my arms, clinging to my shirt, watching her mother like a complete stranger. Chloe tried so hard, I'll give her that. She brought new toys, books, sang Hannah's favorite songs. But Hannah just wasn't interested. The moment Chloe tried to pick her up, Hannah would cry, a genuine, distressed cry, and immediately reach back for me. The social worker made a note of it. Child showed clear signs of attachment disruption, recommending continued primary placement with father. By the 3rd visit, Hannah was warming up a little, yes. But the second she got tired or overwhelmed, her little arms would shoot out, reaching for me, not Chloe. Chloe started showing up exactly on time, asking detailed questions about Hannah's routine. I could see the genuine effort now. But I also knew, deep down, it was too late for trying to matter in the way she desperately wanted it to. The court issued a final custody order after 3 long months. Primary physical custody went to me. Chloe was granted standard visitation every other weekend and 1 evening per week. She moved into a small 1-bedroom apartment across town and, I heard, started therapy. When the judge signed those papers, I didn't feel victorious. I just felt utterly, completely exhausted. Hannah turned 2 about a month after everything was finalized. I threw her a small party here, at our apartment. Chloe came for exactly 1 hour, during her scheduled visit time, bringing a giant stuffed elephant. Hannah glanced at it for maybe 5 seconds before cheerfully going back to her wooden blocks. When it was time for Chloe to leave, she knelt down, hugged Hannah tightly, and said, "Mommy loves you so much." Hannah, oblivious, just chirped bye-bye, and scampered back to her cake. I watched Chloe walk to her car from the window. Saw her sit in the driver's seat for a long minute, hands gripping the wheel, before she finally started the engine and drove away. I cleaned up after everyone left, then tucked Hannah into bed. And as I sat there, in the quiet of her room, Ron's words came back to me: the court doesn't care about feelings. It only cares about facts. He was right. But he'd left out the most important part. The facts matter because they show who actually loves a kid. Not who says they love them, or claims they'd die for them. But who proves it. Every single day. By showing up when it's hard. By staying when it's exhausting. By choosing that child over everything else, every single time. Chloe had chosen herself. She had chosen freedom and fun over being a mother to our daughter. And that choice had cost her everything that truly mattered. I had to live with that. With the fallout. But at least I got to live with Hannah. I got to be there for every scraped knee, every new word, every small, precious victory. And that made all of it worth it. Every single, exhausting second. This whole journey taught me so much about what truly matters, and who you can really count on. I'm still processing it all, honestly. What do you think? Was I too harsh, or did I do exactly what any good father would do? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please give it a like and subscribe for more real stories. Your support means a lot.